Some rocks don't just sit on the earth, they seem to defy the very laws that built it. A massive boulder balances on the edge of a cliff without ever falling, and thousands of stone towers rise together like an entire forest turned to stone. And for a few days each year, a waterfall glows like molten fire as it pours down a granite cliff, as if the mountain itself were bleeding light. These are not sculptures, and they are not the work of human hands. They are geological wonders, shaped by time, pressure, and forces so precise that science still struggles to explain them. Join us as we journey through the most extraordinary geological wonders on Earth, where stone itself seems to defy every rule. Like a giant fossilized stone serpent across the plateau, Fiadra Glufor twists through rock formed about 2 million years ago. As twilight falls, mist and shifting light can create dark figures between the rocky hollows, making the landscape feel even more mysterious. At the bottom of the canyon, nearly 328 feet below, an icy dark blue stream flows quietly between two towering rock walls. Sasser. Rather than being worn away slowly, the canyon is believed to have been carved through softer rock by powerful floods of melting glacial water. Bright green moss covers the rugged cliffs, making the harsh landscape appear soft and surreal, like another world. Inside the twisting gorge, sounds repeatedly echo between the rock walls, causing both the rushing water and the wind to sound deep and strangely unfamiliar. Jutting out from a rugged cliff at about 1,148 feet high, Three Whale Rock makes the three sandstone blocks look like a family of whales gliding across a vast forest sea. Although the stone heads stretch into the open air and feel unstable, they remain very solid because their bodies are locked tightly into the mother rock core. On the rock surface, many dark cracks and uneven lines appear like wrinkles on the thick skin of a real whale. Their size is much larger than it seems in photos, especially the flat back of the largest rock, which is wide enough to suggest a two-lane road. At midday, the sandstone absorbs strong sunlight and can heat up to about 104 degrees Fahrenheit, making the surface difficult to touch for long with bare hands. This contrast between the unstable looking shape and the deeply rooted base turns this wonder into a pod of stone whales quietly drifting through time. Bright white against the blue sea, Old Harry rocks appear as the remaining pieces of a stone bridge about 18 miles long that once connected two lands across the channel. Inside that white colour are traces of countless sea microorganisms that settled on the ocean floor and were pressed into chalk over tens of millions of years. Under sunlight, the white chalk, the green grass on top, and the deep blue sea below separate into three clear bands of colour. Because the bright white surface can reflect moonlight, these cliffs were once used by ancient sailors as a natural marker to guide them from far away. Because chalk is very soft, waves and sea winds still wear away the cliff edge by about 6 to 12 inches each year, constantly rewriting the shape of this place. The waves also force air into small cracks, creating repeated pressure that slowly weakens the cliff from the inside. More than 11,000 feet above sea level, Salinas Grande stretches out like a harsh, white world, almost completely isolated from everything beyond it. Beneath the endless salt crust lies valuable lithium, turning this empty desert into an important source of material for modern technology. The salt surface reflects light with extreme intensity, shrinking shadows at midday and making the entire landscape glow with overwhelming brightness. Covering more than 81 square miles, the desert causes severe glare during the day, while temperatures quickly fall below 32 degrees Fahrenheit after night arrives. Although the surface appears as solid as rock, the groundwater beneath it is highly sensitive, and chemicals leaking from mining activities can cause lasting pollution. During the rainy season, a thin layer of water covers the salt, erases the horizon, and turns the desert into a giant mirror, making travellers feel as though they are floating in mid-air. Golden Rock, Myanmar. On the edge of a cliff about 3,609 feet high, Golden Rock shines among mountain clouds like a giant piece of gold trying to fight gravity. Only men may cross the small bridge to touch the rock and add gold, while women must stay outside the barrier under a religious rule that has lasted for centuries. Millions of 24-karat gold leaves placed by believers over time have covered its surface, turning the grey granite into a glowing object among incense smoke and prayers. The rock is about 25 feet tall and weighs nearly 674 tonnes, yet its contact point with the mountain below is extremely small and uneven. Before modern transport support existed, pilgrims once had to walk barefoot over thousands of stone steps through deep, misty forests to reach this place. That is why the legend of the Buddha's hair on top of the rock does not only explain its strange balance, but also turns this place into a test of faith and endurance. Wave Rock, Australia. In the dry desert land, Wave Rock looks like a giant ocean wave turned to stone just before crashing down onto the ground. Red and yellow mineral streaks run down the rock face, making the granite wall look even more like silent rushing water. This smooth curve was not shaped by wind, but by groundwater slowly eating away the rock base for millions of years before the outer soil was washed away. At about 49 feet high and 361 feet long, the rock creates such strong visual pressure that people below feel they may be crushed. In truth, this is only the exposed part of a huge monolith hidden deep underground, like a granite iceberg in the desert. To Indigenous people, this is also sacred land linked to the legend of the rainbow serpent after it passed through and drank all the water. Not lava or real blood, yet blood fall stains a white wall of ice red, making it look like a giant wound across Antarctica. The colour that first shocked explorers in 1911 appears when pressure forces iron-rich water outside, where it meets oxygen and quickly turns into rust. Even more strangely, when part of the salty water freezes, the process releases heat, melts the surrounding ice and opens new paths for the liquid to escape. In reality, the flow comes from a concentrated saltwater system isolated in darkness beneath about 1,312 feet of ice. Its extremely cold, dry and salty conditions resemble Mars, turning this place into a model for studying whether life could survive beyond Earth. Although ice-penetrating radar has revealed the hidden water network below, how the flow continues and how microbes survive for millions of years are still not fully understood. Geological, Norway. Trapped between two vertical cliffs, Geological looks like a giant stone that nature left hanging in the air to test human nerves. To step onto this lonely rock for only a few minutes, many visitors in peak season must wait 2 to 3 hours on a narrow cliff edge filled with cold wind. Even though tens of thousands of people come here each year to take photos, dance, or do handstands, no one has ever slipped from the rock's own surface into the abyss. The rock is only about 177 cubic feet, but it sits above a drop of about 3,228 feet, making it look like it is floating over a bottomless darkness. It is not the same rock as the cliff itself, but a wandering stone carried by ancient glaciers before getting trapped by chance in this narrow crack. In folk legends, strange trapped rocks like this are often seen as giant trolls turned into stone by sunlight while trying to jump across an abyss. Rising from a strangely flat land, Man Pupuna stands with 7 giant stone pillars like ruins from a world that has already died. Their arrangement feels almost unreal, with 6 pillars standing close together while the 7th stands apart like a giant upside-down bottle. Over millions of years, nature slowly wore down an ancient mountain, leaving only hard stone cores about 98 to 138 feet tall. Even stranger, their shapes change with every viewing angle, as a horse head can become an old man's face or a robed monk after only a few steps. The most shocking part is how suddenly they rise from flat ground with no mountain slope leading up, as if 7 stone blocks were dropped straight from the sky. This extreme isolation, with no paved road and weather often blocking helicopters, gives Mampapuner a raw and haunting beauty. Balancing on a narrow sandstone neck, Mexican hat rock takes the shape of a wide-brimmed hat, as if it is briefly resisting gravity in the red desert. The upper hat brim still looks solid and whole, while the supporting pillar below is cracked, flaking and crumbling like a dry biscuit. From below, that contrast creates a clear sense of unease, as if the whole stone hat could tilt out of the sky at any moment. This strange hat shape was formed as wind and water wore away the softer mudstone below, leaving the harder sandstone above still standing. Even more striking, the material that formed this giant stone hat was first laid down about 300 million years ago beneath an ancient sea. Although it still stands today, the thin stone neck continues to erode, turning Mexican hat rock into a wonder slowly moving toward the day it falls. Shilan Stone Forest, China. In the cold grey limestone mountains, Shilan appears like a forest turned into stone, where countless giant spears stab straight into the sky. The deeper you enter this maze of about 154 square miles, the fear of getting lost between stone and darkness awakens your survival instinct. Pillars up to about 98 feet tall crowd together, forming narrow paths barely wide enough for one person, blocking the light and making the air feel damp and cold. Few people would guess that these stone pillars were formed from coral and sea creature shells, traces of a tropical seabed from 270 million years ago. Once each year, tens of thousands of torches during the fire festival light up the grey cliffs, making the stone shadows dance like an ancient world coming back to life. Among these cold, sharp rocks, young plants, moss, and old tree roots still cling to the smallest cracks, creating a wild beauty of life that refuses to give up. Fairy chimneys, Cappadocia, Turkey. From far away, the fairy chimneys look like stone columns rising from the earth, as if a hidden fairy world still lives below them. When sunlight changes direction, minerals in the rock turn them from ivory white to orange pink, making the whole land seem to change colour and breathe under the sky. For thousands of years, people carved the soft rock into a maze of homes, shelters, and underground cities deep inside the earth. In truth, this surreal landscape began with volcanic eruptions 3 to 10 million years ago, leaving thick layers of ash that later hardened into tuff. People also cut thousands of small holes into the cliffs to raise pigeons for fertilizer, making many stone pillars look like giant pigeon apartments. Every sunrise, about 150 bright hot air balloons rise above the stone forest, turning Cappadocia into a scene that feels both ancient and dreamlike. Moiraki boulders, New Zealand. On the quiet sand, the Moiraki boulders lie scattered like fossilized eggs of a giant creature forgotten by the ocean. When sunset comes, thin water over the sand turns the shore into a red mirror, making the shadows of the round stones look like a scene from an ancient dream. This strange shape did not appear overnight, but grew under the old sea floor for 4 to 5.5 million years before reaching about 7 feet across. Many boulders are about 10 feet wide and weigh around 8 tons. Making viewers feel they look more like alien objects than natural stones. In local legend, these round stones are the remains of food baskets and water gourds turned into stone after a mythical canoe wreck. Especially, many boulders are cracked like eggshells, revealing mineral veins inside and making them look like stone creatures opening their eyes under the sunlight. El Peñón de Guatapé, Colombia. In a network of deep blue lakes, El Peñón rises like a lonely granite monolith, about 656 feet high, standing out among the water and small islands around it. On the rock wall, two unfinished white letters still remain like marks from an ownership dispute between two towns. The landscape below is not a natural lake, but a huge hydroelectric reservoir that flooded valleys and turned hills into hundreds of rolling islands. The path to the top follows a natural crack, with about 740 brick steps winding like a zipper sewing the ground to the summit. The name La Piedra del Peñol is tied to the town that once saw this rock as its symbol, making the ownership story even more famous. From a rock that first took 5 days to climb in 1954, this place has now become one of the most dramatic viewpoints above Colombia's blue water. Balanced Rock, United States. In the Utah desert, Balanced Rock looks like a giant stone placed dangerously on a neck that seems impossibly thin to you. When sunset falls over the open plain, the iron-rich rock changes from orange-red to dark red, making it stand out like a lonely flame. Over millions of years, wind and water have kept carving away the softer, lower foot, making the support smaller and the whole structure feel more tense. The upper rock is about 56 feet tall and weighs about 3,600 tonnes, equal to more than 50 blue whales pressing down on a fragile base. From far away, its loneliness in the wide open land makes Balanced Rock look like an ancient watchtower from a lost civilization. That is why it is not a symbol of forever, but a moment where nature seems to pause before destruction continues. As the morning mist lifts, the Bromo Sea of Sand appears like a vast ocean of black ash, where the ground makes frightening sounds beneath every footstep. Just below the dusty surface, countless pieces of porous pumice are crushed, producing a dry, cracking sound like thousands of brittle bones breaking apart. Deeper within the central area, compasses and GPS signals are sometimes strongly disrupted, leading to theories that a massive deposit of magnetic iron ore lies beneath the ground. This strange landscape began forming about 45,000 years ago when a massive volcano erupted and then collapsed into the magma chamber below. Beyond leaving behind a black sea of ash, the extremely dry environment can cause friction between dust particles, sometimes creating strange electrical flashes. When darkness covers the landscape, the complete lack of visual landmarks can easily make people lose their sense of direction in the seemingly endless emptiness. Like the remains of a great natural war, this coastline was born when the ocean froze a glowing river of lava heated to 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit. To witness this scene, people carved stone balconies without safety barriers, forcing visitors to face the full fury of the ocean directly. Although the surface foams violently like a boiling cauldron, the water crashing against the cliffs is actually cold, measuring only about 64 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Broken rocks that fall into the sea are swept up by the waves like natural cannonballs, then thrown back to destroy the same cliffs that created them. Compressed air trapped inside deep holes also explodes repeatedly, producing thunderous roars and sending sharp vibrations straight through the ground beneath your feet. Under thousands of pounds of pressure per square foot from the violent waves, this fragile hollow structure is slowly collapsing and dying every day. Kalu Karlu, Australia. In the red desert of Australia, Karlu looks like a giant marble field left behind by gods on sunburned ground. To indigenous people, this is sacred land where the stones are seen as fossilized rainbow serpent eggs from the Dreamtime. Daytime heat can reach about 113 degrees Fahrenheit, while nights fall near freezing, and this harsh expansion and shrinking splits many rocks in half like an invisible sword cut them. Many granite boulders are up to about 20 feet wide and weigh hundreds of tons, yet they still balance in unstable stacks on tiny contact points that make viewers hold their breath. Some rock groups are also considered forbidden areas under ancient spiritual law, where stepping in the wrong place can be seen as violating something sacred. In 1952, an 8-ton stone was once taken away for a memorial, and it took 45 years of legal struggle before it was returned to this sacred land. Yonaguni Monument, Japan. Under the deep blue sea of Japan, Yonaguni Monument appears like a giant step pyramid drowned by time. If it was truly made by humans, this structure could be more than 10,000 years old, from a time when the land still stood above the sea before waters rose after the Ice Age. Its flat stone faces, sharp right angles, and deep straight grooves make it look more like a giant ritual platform than a natural rock. That is why it is called the Atlantis of the East, where the debate between a geological wonder and the ruins of a lost civilization still has no final answer. The waters around it have strong currents and often hammer head sharks, making the journey to reach the stone even more intense and full of life. In 1986, a diver discovered it while searching for a place to watch hammerhead sharks, opening a huge mystery between science, legend, and human imagination. In the middle of a vast desert, Shiprock appears like a giant sailing ship standing still on a sea of sand. From its central core, thin and sharp rock walls stretch out in several directions like stone veins spreading across the ground. This rock formation rises 1,583 feet, breaking the almost perfect flatness of the empty landscape around it. Few people know that this surreal shape began from volcanic activity about 3,000 feet beneath the Earth's crust, rather than simply rising from the ground. Over 30 million years, wind, water, and harsh weather wore away the softer outer rock, revealing the hard magma core inside. More surprisingly, the sediment layers around the rock still preserve dinosaur fossils, as if ancient fire and prehistoric life were once locked together inside one land of stone. Sigiriya, Sri Lanka. Tearing through the endless green carpet of the Great Forest to rise 656 feet high, this glowing red megalith looks like a dazzling meteorite, though it is actually the magma core left from a volcano that has been asleep forever. Stepping onto the dangerous flat summit, the wide view of Earth and sky quickly explains one desire: to place the whole world beneath the feet of an emperor. But to reach that throne in the clouds, visitors must test their courage on more than 1,200 fragile stone steps, under burning sunlight and wild winds striking the cliff. Along the edge of the abyss, a stone wall was once polished with beeswax so finely that the ancient ruler could see his own powerful reflection whenever he walked past. Above that mirror wall, hundreds of fairy paintings once seemed to float in the air, but most were sadly scraped away by monks because their beauty disturbed the peace of meditation. In the end, this shining wonder was not born only from beauty, but from a dark fear, shaped by a king who buried his own father alive to steal the throne. Like a magical prism, Marble Caves shimmers brilliantly as light reflects from water filled with countless microscopic mineral particles. Behind this beauty lies a marble formation weighing about 5.5 billion US tons, which has escaped industrial mining because of its extremely remote location. Most remarkably, every summer, melting ice raises the lake level by about 3 feet and floods the entire cave in a mysterious cobalt blue glow. SARS. To create arches as smooth as those of a Gothic cathedral, waves have continuously carved the marble walls for more than 6,000 years. This narrow, water-filled structure leaves visitors almost nowhere to stand, forcing them to travel in small boats and carefully slip through the tight passages. However, this beauty is incredibly fragile because if the ice disappears completely, the supply of mineral powder will fade and the cave walls may gradually return to greyish white. Standing out beneath the wide sky, Devil's Tower carries deep vertical cracks along its rock body, making it look like an ancient ruin scratched apart by time. Over millions of years, rain and wind wore away the softer rock around it, slowly revealing the hard core once buried deep underground. Science says this structure came from an igneous intrusion about 50 million years old, which cooled slowly and cracked into nearly even polygonal stone columns. Rising 867 feet with a flat top nearly 2 acres wide, it feels like a giant stone table lifted straight from the ground. At the foot of the tower, many large rocks lie scattered, seen as traces of pieces that cracked off and fell over time. Even stranger, that flat summit still supports a small ecosystem, making Devil's Tower feel like a separate stone world standing between earth and sky. Rising above the desert like an alien beehive covering 174 square miles, Bungle Bungle makes thousands of orange and black domes resemble an abandoned city on another planet. The landscape changes like a magic trick, glowing orange under intense sunlight before quickly turning ghostly dark grey when rain falls. for 40,000 years. This maze was protected by indigenous people and remained almost unknown to the outside world until 1983. Its changing colours come from orange layers of iron oxide mixed with ancient colonies of moisture-absorbing cyanobacteria. Although the domes rise as high as 820 feet, they are extremely fragile and can erode quickly if their protective microbial coating disappears. Most mysteriously, rainwater nearly vanishes when it touches the rock, yet the underground water network inside the sandstone remains unmapped, because drilling could cause the entire formation to collapse. Two dark eye sockets carved deep into the stone face make Skull Rock look like a giant skull staring back at the desert. Around it, rounded boulders sit piled on top of each other among twisted, thorny desert plants, creating the feeling of a strange foreign land. Under the harsh summer sun, the rock surface can heat up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to burn anyone who touches it. Its strange shape today was slowly created by rainwater collecting in small depressions, then gradually wearing away the rock surface over thousands of years. Sunset light covers the hollow sockets, making this stone skull feel less like a lifeless object and more like something waking up in silence. In the cold Himalayan desert, Magnetic Hill creates an unbelievable sight, as vehicles and even flowing water appear to move uphill by themselves. The phenomenon feels even more mysterious because the road crosses an empty landscape with no streetlights, rest stops, or clear objects to use as reference points. At the marked position, a vehicle placed in neutral will slowly roll forward after the brake is released, even though its engine is turned off. The surrounding mountains hide the true horizon, causing the brain to lose its visual reference points and misread the direction of the slope. Therefore, the road that appears to rise is actually sloping gently downward, turning the normal pull of gravity into a highly convincing illusion. At an elevation of about 14,100 feet, the thin air, freezing cold, and deep blue sky make this explained phenomenon feel surreal and unforgettable. Like a mysterious fragment from another planet, Loch Batan releases freezing mud before suddenly tearing open the sky with violent columns of fire. Behind this contradiction lies the mystery of what ignites the methane, even though the rising mud shows no clear source of ignition. This unexplained phenomenon has made Lukbatan's more than 25 eruptions one of the most unpredictable geological anomalies on Earth. Stranger still, although the mud remains at only about 36 to 37 degrees Fahrenheit, the grey ground keeps bubbling and releasing gas like a boiling cauldron that needs no heat. During its eruptions, the flames have reportedly fused nearby sand and rock into twisted masses of glass, preserving traces of the extreme heat. Even when the volcano falls silent, deep, gurgling sounds continue to rise from beneath the ground, as though the Earth were digesting vast pockets of toxic gas below. Above a sea of clouds at the summit of Kalimatu, three neighbouring lakes change into completely opposite colours, as though one volcano were hiding three separate worlds. Beyond their astonishing colours, local people believe this is sacred ground where the souls of the dead are separated after leaving the living world. Behind this belief, the water is thought to change colour through oxidation reactions between metals at the bottom and oxygen near the surface. The brilliant colours stand out against steep, grey ash cliffs, creating a cold landscape where almost no vegetation can survive. However, scientists still cannot clearly identify the underground fractures that carry gases and minerals from the same magma source into the three lakes at different concentrations. More frighteningly, one lake has a pH below 1, meaning its seemingly peaceful water is actually extremely acidic and highly dangerous. Against a granite cliff swallowed by darkness, Yosemite Firefall suddenly ignites like a ribbon of red-hot lava pouring down from the sky. When powerful winds sweep across the cliff, the water is torn into glowing mist, surrounding the enormous rock wall with a fiery halo. This rare effect appears only when the sunset, water flow, clouds and clarity of the air come together almost perfectly. In reality, the lava is snowmelt near 32 degrees Fahrenheit, falling more than 1,968 feet before breaking into cold mist above the ground. More strangely, During a few rare moments, unusual purple streaks can appear across the waterfall, making the scene feel even more mysterious. Because it depends on so many delicate conditions, the phenomenon appears only in late February, while its brightest moment lasts between 10 and 12 minutes. Towering between the open sea and a dark pine forest, Dune du Pilar rises to 377 feet, like a giant desert mountain misplaced in temperate Europe. This enormous mass of golden sand is trapped between the rough waves of the Atlantic Ocean and an endless forest, forming a sharp boundary between three completely different landscapes. Beyond its strange appearance, sliding sand can produce a deep roar between 50 and 105 Hz under rare conditions, a sound that remains extremely difficult to reproduce accurately. Over many eras, dark bands along the dune slopes have preserved traces of soil and vegetation buried beneath the advancing sand. Along with these hidden layers, the dune's slow but powerful movement has covered trees and solid structures that once stood at its base. Almost disturbingly, this enormous wall of sand continues moving inland, gradually erasing the boundary between the forest and the desert. In the middle of green Europe, Bardenas Reales suddenly tears through the landscape like a barren piece of Mars thrown onto Earth. Under the intense midday heat, the ground reflects powerful waves of warmth that twist the light and create illusions of blue lakes along the horizon. In sharp contrast to those shimmering illusions, the sheltered canyons become so silent that visitors can hear a strange ringing inside their own ears. Most striking are the pointed rock towers rising several dozen feet, with weak clay bodies supporting heavy sandstone caps that appear ready to collapse. Deeper inside this maze, magnetic disturbances can cause compasses to drift and electronic devices to lose their signals, a phenomenon that remains poorly understood. Moving only about 100 feet from the marked trail can leave visitors completely disoriented among the twisting gullies as sunset turns the cliffs dark red. Carrying a violent contrast between golden sand and pitch black rock, this land reveals the devastating remains of supervolcanoes from the Jurassic period. Since ancient times, countless caravans carrying gold and silver had to gamble their lives while crossing this deadly, dry maze. The harshness reaches its peak when the black rock layer absorbs heat up to 158 degrees Fahrenheit, burning almost every fragile form of life on the surface. Rising from this natural furnace are hundreds of rolling black hills shaped like giant overturned bells beneath the sky. The shattered gravel underfoot was created as temperatures repeatedly plunge from 122 degrees Fahrenheit to 32, tearing solid lava blocks apart. Taking advantage of this rare open landscape, the Roman Empire once used the hilltops as natural watchtowers to hunt groups of salt smugglers. Hidden deep beneath a limestone island, this flooded wonder forces visitors to lie flat inside a wooden boat to squeeze through a rock arch only about 3 feet high. Few people realise that this suffocating entrance reveals a brutal geological process that is slowly sinking the entire cave into the sea by 6 to 8 inches every century. With sunlight blocked from above, plant life has nearly disappeared, turning the cold interior into a biological tomb almost completely empty of fish. In return, a massive underwater opening absorbs the red wavelengths and preserves only blue light, making the heart of the cave glow like a giant gemstone. Stranger still, any object touching the water becomes covered in countless tiny bubbles, creating a sparkling illusion, like a bar of pure silver. This surreal beauty mixed with an eerie atmosphere frightened ancient people into abandoning the cave for hundreds of years because they believed it was the lair of witches. Across a cold plateau, El Torcal raises layered limestone towers that look like flying saucers and the ruins of an alien civilization. Few people realise that this maze lay beneath the sea 150 million years ago before violent geological forces lifted it thousands of feet. Over millions of years, weekly acidic rain has eroded only 4 ten-thousandths of an inch each year, cutting the rock into thin, unstable layers that still remain standing. This structure creates a silent world where plants cling to cracks and wind screams through empty caves. More dangerously, Latace's vipers almost disappear against the grey stone, while temperatures can fall by more than 20 degrees Fahrenheit within a few hours. Most unforgiving of all, stepping only 10 feet from the marked trail can instantly erase your sense of direction among thousands of nearly identical rock formations. Lit by brilliant neon lights, Reed Flute Cave appears like a science fiction world hidden inside limestone that is 180 million years old. Behind this beauty, the cave was once familiar to ancient scholars, yet it disappeared from history for centuries before refugees found it again during the 1940s. The historical mystery deepens because archaeologists still do not understand how 8th century poets used torches to write calligraphy without being suffocated by smoke or damaging the stone wall. Beyond preserving traces of human history, its 787-foot passage was formed extremely slowly by underground water, taking about 254 years to create just 1 inch of stalactite. Even more strangely, many formations look soft and spongy like mushrooms or coral beneath the lights, but sound almost as hard as reinforced concrete when struck. Most mysteriously, water from the underground lake quietly drains through cracks into a deeper channel that has never been fully mapped, leaving its final destination unknown. Cut nearly 2,300 feet deep, Verdon Gorge reveals the power of a river that spent almost 2 million years carving through limestone. Along the nearly vertical walls, griffon vultures with 9-foot wingspans rule the sky and build their nests on high, rocky ledges. At the bottom of the gorge, today's calm blue river is only the shadow of a natural monster now locked behind hydroelectric dams. Few people realise that this canyon is an ancient graveyard of countless tropical sea creatures from the Jurassic period, compressed into porous limestone. This hollow structure allows water to enter the cracks, freeze and expand, constantly tearing apart the cliffs and causing sudden rockfalls. Despite the danger, these sharp stone walls remain a deadly arena where climbers gamble their lives on every narrow handhold. Standing high in the open air, Castellan is a square rock platform measuring about 82 by 82 feet, like a giant table carved directly into the mountainside by nature. Authorities refuse to install safety barriers, enforcing a harsh rule that visitors must take full responsibility for their own lives when approaching the edge. Formed by glaciers about 10,000 years ago, this cliff can be swallowed by a thick fog within only 5 minutes, making every step extremely dangerous. Its almost perfectly vertical face creates a direct drop into an abyss nearly 2,000 feet deep, where death may be only one step away. At this dizzying height, visitors must also fight violent wind gusts reaching 40 to 50 miles per hour, strong enough to knock down anyone standing too close to the edge. Even more frighteningly, scientists have warned that this million-ton rock slab could create a massive tsunami if it ever collapsed into the water below. Bearing a name often linked to the idea of piercing, Cono de Arida rises from the white salt desert like a dark spear driven into the sky. Its nearly perfect symmetry makes it resemble an ancient pyramid, yet this giant cone was formed when magma rose from underground, cooled and hardened before an eruption could begin. That strange origin becomes even harder to understand because the empty plain offers no trees, houses, or other objects that reveal its true size. As a result, travellers can drive toward it for hours, while the cone appears to remain frozen at the same distance. Reaching it also means crossing rough high-altitude terrain above 11,000 feet, where thin air can quickly drain strength and cause headaches or dizziness. Most dangerously, the harder-looking mixed salt may conceal deep mud beneath it, ready to trap any person or vehicle that leaves the safe track. Standing out among Poland's vegetation, Crooked Forest appears deeply mysterious, like hundreds of giant question marks driven into the ground. Nearly 400 pine trees bend at almost 90 degrees, stretch between 3 and 10 feet along the ground, and then rise straight into the air. Their curved sections, roughly knee-high, create tunnel-like spaces that make visitors feel as though they are walking through a wooden maze. Even stranger, most of the trunks curve in the same direction, while the surrounding pine trees continue to grow completely straight. Many theories suggest that people once bent the young trees to produce curved timber, but war may have caused the original technique to disappear. As these aging pine trees slowly weaken and collapse, the forest could vanish before the true cause of their unusual shape is ever discovered. Punumapunku, Bolivia. On Bolivia's cold, windy plateau, Pumapunku looks like a giant stone assembly yard left behind with precision beyond imagination. Even stranger, many blocks have eye-shaped grooves, where ancient builders poured molten metal to make clamps that help the structure resist earthquakes better. The H-shaped stones were crafted so similarly that they look like products from one mold, able to fit together like giant puzzle pieces. At more than 12,500 feet high, where the air is thin and cold, moving stones over 130 tons from quarries many miles away remains a huge question. Many blocks were made from extremely hard andesitis, a stone so difficult to cut that modern people often need diamond blades to work with it. Without rich decoration, this place still shocks people, with flat stone faces, 90-degree corners, and tiny straight drill holes from around 500 to 600 AD. Standing about 49 feet tall in the cold northern sea, Fitzakur suggests the shape of a giant rhinoceros lowering its head toward the water. On winter nights, green northern lights appear behind it, making the lonely stone rhino shape of Havitsukur look even more like a creature lost from the real world. Few people know that the rock's legs have been hollowed out by waves so deeply that humans had to pour concrete into the base to keep the structure from collapsing. The threat does not only come from outside, because seawater also enters the cracks and then freezes, slowly weakening the rock from within. When the tide pulls back, black volcanic sand appears, leaving the rock standing alone in a cold and grey emptiness. Beyond the legend of a troll turned to stone, this structure is actually a remaining basal core left after many years of being worn down by the sea. Split by a crack so straight it is hard to believe. Split apple rock looks like a giant granite apple cut open in clear blue-green water. The gap between the two stone halves looks like a natural viewfinder, framing the horizon inside the narrow opening. The scene changes with the tide, as high water makes the rock look as if it is floating on the sea, while low water reveals its solid base. Although it looks light and separated from the water, it is still an extremely heavy granite rock resting firmly on the stone floor below the sea. That same gap, about 3 to 7 feet wide, creates a special feeling when small kayaks can slip through the crack. Because of that, the crack that broke its original shape is also the detail that turned an ordinary rock into a natural masterpiece. What makes Al Nasla haunting is not its size, but the straight gap, like a machine-cut line dividing the sandstone block in the desert into two almost perfect halves. Not only strange for its cut, the rock also stands on two uneven bases below, one sharp and one wider, yet they still hold the heavy sandstone above. Few people expect this unstable-looking structure to be about 30 feet tall, nearly the height of a 3-story building, instead of looking small as it does in photos. On that same flat rock surface, ancient horse carvings show this place was once connected to nomadic life and traces of human activity from long ago. As for the strange split, current explanations say it may have started from a slight movement of Earth's crust, before sand-filled winds polished both rock faces over many centuries. Without needing magic, this wonder still shows how time, wind, and stone can create a shape that seems outside nature itself. With smooth cliffs nearly 1,312 feet high, Mount Roraima lifts a giant stone tabletop like a world cut away from the ground. Across the dark, sharp sandstone surface, small round pools appear with soft golden sand on the bottom and water as clear as crystal. Crystal. Deeper on the summit, grooves and stone pillars carved by rain and wind form a black maze where mist can make travellers lose their way. In this harsh environment, life has evolved in unusual ways, including a tiny black frog that does not jump but curls up and rolls downhill to escape. Escape. When the rainy season arrives, water pours from the plateau edge into the clouds below, making hundreds of waterfalls seem to fall from the sky. Tied to the legend of the ancient tree of life stump, this lonely mountain still feels like a piece of earth forgotten by time. From an ancient ocean, Mount Sankingshan was pushed up to more than 5,906 feet, forming a giant forest of granite pillars among the clouds. Its structure is striking because of the contrast between sunlit stone peaks and deep ravines that look as if they were split open vertically. This process happens when water enters cracks, freezes, and expands by about 9%, slowly separating the hard granite core over time. Mist fills the deeply carved valleys, making many rock masses appear to float in the air. On the smooth vertical cliffs, many ancient pines still root themselves in tiny cracks to endure wind, ice, snow, and time. The walkways clinging to the mountain walls make the steepness of the landscape even clearer, where every step opens above a deep drop below. Located inside a rift 5,387 feet deep in Earth's crust, Lake Baikal holds about 20% of the planet's unfrozen freshwater. Few people know that beneath the lake floor lies a sediment layer up to 5 miles thick, making the rift structure below deeper and more complex than the surface suggests. This giant body of water is not completely still, because the tectonic fault system around the lake continues to widen very slowly each year. Despite its enormous scale, the lake water is so clear that people can see about 131 feet down thanks to tiny microorganisms that keep filtering it naturally. In winter, the surface freezes into clear blue ice like crystal, trapping stacked white methane bubble columns beneath it. Because of that, a fault that once opened a great depth in Earth's crust has become a storehouse of fresh water and a precious natural habitat. Without sharp cliffs or deep abysses, Chocolate Hill still makes the ground feel impossible when its rounded hill turn brown together like chocolate candies on a green carpet. But that soft, rounded shape was created as rainwater quietly wore down limestone blocks over millions of years. The origin of this landform began beneath an ancient sea, where coral, shells, and marine sediments collected before tectonic movement lifted them upward. The landscape becomes even harder to believe because the hills repeat in almost even cone shapes, standing about 98 to 164 feet tall. The scale of this wonder is huge, spreading across nearly 19 square miles and holding about 1,776 hills that continue into the distance. Right below the bare brown hills, green valleys and terraced fields still spread out, creating a clear boundary between dry ground and fertile living land. From the ground, it looks like scattered rocky ridges, but from orbit, the eye of the Sahara opens into a stone eye nearly 25 miles wide in the desert. Those clear rings formed as desert wind wore away the softer rock layers, leaving harder ridges rising on the surface. Although it was once suspected to be a meteor impact crater, this structure has no melted rock or traces of metal from beyond Earth. Under changing sunlight, the ancient rock layers appear in earthy brown, ash grey and pale green, making the rings even clearer against the wide sand. Tectonic forces also bent the structure into a slightly oval shape, making the concentric rock rings look more natural instead of perfectly round like an impact crater. Because of that, the Eye of the Sahara appears as a giant ancient rock dome, so large that only the sky can see its full shape. The sandstone layers of white pocket twist across the dry desert ground, creating a wrinkled surface like a stone brain exposed under the open sky. The sandstone mass below is nearly 984 feet thick, quietly preserving traces of ancient climate from the age of dinosaurs. For tens of thousands of years, sand-filled winds have smoothed the rock walls into curving domes like ocean waves held inside stone. One theory says that about 190 million years ago, tremors caused wet sand to liquefy, twisting the sandstone layers and preserving that strange shape. The road into this place has no fixed paved route, forcing visitors to use four-wheel drive vehicles to cross deep sand that can easily trap them. After rare rains, shallow pools turn the ground into a giant mirror, reflecting the sky and doubling the surreal landscape of this place. Shaped like a cracked limestone chessboard, this plateau creates a natural paradox where Arctic and Mediterranean plants grow side by side. Ironically, when visitors stand on its highest hills, they are actually stepping on the remains of an ancient seafloor scattered with coral fossils. Despite the almost soil-free terrain, prehistoric people dragged stone slabs weighing more than 3,300 pounds to build countless exposed megalithic tombs. This fierce landscape also hides strange lakes that fill automatically with groundwater during winter, but disappear completely when summer arrives. At the same time, millions of tons of grey limestone act like a giant natural heater, keeping winter temperatures stable at around 43 degrees Fahrenheit. This barren beauty is so harsh that it was once described as a land without enough water, wood, or soil to kill and bury a person. The coloured layers of rainbow hills of Nalaheen appear on the dry slopes, like a cross-section of Earth, where red, yellow and grey lie stacked under the sun. Few people would expect this dry landscape to have once rested beneath an ancient salt lake before the water slowly evaporated and left layers of sediment behind. Minerals and salt built up over a long time, making the ground harsh and leaving it difficult for plants to take root on the bare slopes. Because there are almost no large trees, the mineral colours show more clearly, especially after rain or when sunset makes the surface darker. Although they do not happen often, strong rains can still cut the soft ground into rough grooves, like the wrinkled skin of an ancient reptile. Made from mud and soft earth, the slopes are very fragile. So even one footprint can break the surface that formed over millions of years. From the valley floor, Love Valley looks like a giant forest of stone mushrooms, where hundreds of pillars with dark caps rise 66 to 131 feet above the dry ground. When the sunlight changes angle, the shadows of the stone caps stretch down the pillars, making the whole valley sometimes look like a row of abandoned ancient watchtowers. Up close the rock surface is not smooth but speckled with ancient ash grains, as if it still holds traces of an eruption that cooled long ago. This landscape began with volcanic ash, when soft material was pressed into tough and then covered by a harder layer of lava. Over tens of thousands of years, rain and wind wore away the softer rock around them, while the hard caps protected the bodies below from disappearing too quickly. On the dry and dusty valley floor, small green patches still cling on, making Love Valley feel like a geological ruin that has not completely lost its life. Cutting across the steppe like a white wall with no mountain foot, Ake Kaya rises almost straight up from the flat ground. Right below the cliff, a large band of broken rock keeps building up, showing that the rock mass is still weathering and slowly breaking apart over time. Depending on the light, the surface changes from a bright noon glow to warm orange at sunset, then cold grey under pale moonlight. Inside that white wall is limestone pressed from ancient sea fossils, even preserving prehistoric shark teeth within the rock. The deep, hollow pockets on the cliff not only create natural shelters, but also show how rain and wind have carved into the softer rock over thousands of years. The contrast between the cold white cliff and the green steppe around it makes Aku Kaya feel like a natural border between ancient stone and living nature. Between the green pine forest, Las Carcavas opens like a red scar widened by rainwater, revealing clay towers and deep gullies inside. Part of this landscape began when forests were cut down in the past, removing the root system that held the soil and allowing rain to wash soft earth into erosion channels. The fragile earth pillars can still stand because a hard pebble rests on top, helping block some rainwater from the softer earth below. The brick red colour of this place comes from iron oxide in the clay and sandstone exposed after many stages of weathering and washing. Without enough plant cover, rainwater keeps cutting the ground into V-shaped gullies, some more than 66 feet deep, creating a rough surface like a red earth maze. At midday in summer, the red ground reflects strong heat, making the distant earth pillars shimmer like a mirage across the dry Badlands. Stretching from the cliff toward the ocean, more than 40,000 dark basalt pillars of Giant's Causeway interlock like a giant honeycomb reef. When dry, the stone is ash grey. When waves wash over it, the surface turns glossy black, standing out against white foam and the deep blue sea. These pillars are not the same height, with some rising up to 39 feet and forming rough steps that descend toward the water. What feels hard to believe is that many cut surfaces are fairly flat, while the raised and hollow parts between columns fit together like stones already arranged in place. Along the cliffs, many basalt columns stand close together like stone organ pipes, letting sea wind pass through narrow gaps and create a mysterious echo. This almost mathematical order makes Giant's Causeway look like a human-made structure. Even though it was shaped by lava, seawater, and time. meaning a place where people cannot walk barefoot. Tsingide Bemaraha appears as a grey limestone fortress with thousands of sharp stone points rising toward the sky. Over millions of years, acidic tropical rain dissolved the limestone mass, carving the surface into sharp peaks, thin edges, and connected deep grooves. Deep inside the canyon, looking upward, limestone columns more than 328 feet high stand side by side, making the place look like a giant Gothic cathedral carved by nature. The canyon system reaches about 394 feet deep, creating two clear extremes. The stone tops can reach 122 degrees Fahrenheit, while the floors stay dark, wet, and humid. Lemurs can still jump about 33 feet across the sharp stone points, moving lightly through terrain that is almost impossible to walk across. The sharpness of the rock matches the meaning of its name, because even hiking boots can be worn down after a short time on the pointed limestone edges. Unlike the cold grey limestone forests, Hongshan Stone Forest appears like a bright red stone maze in the middle of nature. On that hot, dry surface, green vines still take root, creating a clear contrast between soft life and ancient stone. Iron oxide inside the rock makes the red colour change with the weather, from dry reddish brown under the sun to a deeper red when rain soaks the surface. Many red stone pillars rise more than 164 feet straight into the sky without wide mountain bases, as if they grow from rock compressed over millions of years. There are no rounded surfaces here because the cliffs are cut into deep grooves, sharp ridges and pointed peaks like a forest of rusty swords aiming toward the sky. Thanks to its constant colour changes under sunlight, the whole landscape feels alive, like a geological chronicle turning its own pages. Magnificent above the calm emerald green sea, Halong Bay appears with thousands of upright limestone towers, recalling the legend of dragons turned into stone. The foundation of this wonder began in an ancient sea hundreds of millions of years ago, when marine sediments were pressed into thick layers of limestone. Over millions of years, rainwater and seawater have worn into the limestone, opening large caves with stone arches, stalactites, and stalagmites. Inside some closed mountain masses, seawater is held as isolated salt lakes, creating small ecological worlds separated from the ocean outside. On the steep cliffs, with little soil, wild tree roots still slip into cracks, gripping the rock tightly to keep growing. Thanks to thousands of interlocking stone islands, large waves are blocked, keeping the bay flat and calm like a green mirror reflecting the sky. Moai statues, Easter Island, Chile. Quietly nestling in the vast ocean 2,200 miles from the mainland, these giant stone blocks carry the sorrowful sigh of a brilliant civilization that has now sunk deep into the past. Beneath the seemingly bare stone heads, the brown earth has kindly embraced and completely sealed the massive figures, preserving countless mysterious tattoos intact through the ups and downs of centuries. Paying no mind to the fierce waves crashing ashore, that silent stone army resolutely turns its back to the vast ocean, offering an affectionate and compassionate gaze to forever guard the peaceful sleep of the households. Going back to the brilliant golden age, today's sorrowful eye sockets were once gorgeously adorned with pure white coral and volcanic glass, radiating an authoritative gaze and shining brightly under the sun warming the island. With miraculous creativity, the ancients cleverly carved the balance in large belly, helping the sacred beings smoothly waddle and walk by themselves in the wind using fragile ropes without borrowing wheels or any arduous pulling power. Now, when only the bare figures remain standing amidst the windy bald hills, the stone foreheads still imprint a late dying wish, silently reminding humanity that draining the milk of Mother Nature will be the harshest death sentence of extinction. Sacsayhuaman, Peru. Reigning proudly on the windy plateau. As a challenge to time, this great megalithic masterpiece is the most vivid testament to the wisdom and soul of the ancient Incas. Beneath those thousand-year-old stones lies a dark and solemn labyrinth, where space seems to freeze, evoking a chilling sensation like stepping into the secret underworld of the gods. With an engineering mindset ahead of its time, the walls were built, tilted, and tightly interlocked, creating a perfect pulse-absorbing mechanism to stand firm after the most devastating earthquakes. Though dragged through dangerous rapids by bare hands, the 100-ton stones still embrace each other so smoothly that even a thin blade cannot find a gap to slip through. Most spectacular are the three sharp zigzag walls stretching 1,312 feet, taking the form of fierce puma fangs, reaching out to snarl at the vast plateau sky. When gently touching the freezing stone layer carrying the breath of the past, one's heart suddenly sinks, bowing respectfully before the extraordinary vitality of a people who created miracles without the help of a wheel. Baalbek, Lebanon. Originating from the mists of myth in the Valley of a Thousand Winds, this sacred land exists as the greatest stone epic that human hands have ever woven. Standing in the heart of the ruins, one is amazed by the magical harmony between the somber grey of ancient columns and the distant white snow-capped mountains, painting a mystical scene from a dream world. In the peaceful space, the six tallest monolithic stone pillars in the world still stand firm, with loyalty reaching straight up like giant arms trying to touch the clouds of heaven. A silent mystery remains at the ancient quarry, where a lonely megalith weighing over 2 million pounds lies still amidst the sand, defying all limits of the most powerful cranes of our time. The special limestones here carry a magical heat storage ability, patiently absorbing harsh daytime sunlight to silently warm warriors through freezing winter nights. When sunset falls, the giant stone walls suddenly glow like brilliant pure gold, leaving a profound reminder of the human desire to carve one's name into eternity. Kailasa, Temple Puli, Titaritka, India. Born from a single basalt block of an ancient volcano, this temple did not rise from the ground, but was carved from the roof down to the base by removing hundreds of thousands of tons of rock. This masterpiece gives a deep spiritual message that true perfection does not come from collecting more, but from carving away the extra layers of ego to reveal our greater self. When you place your hands on the huge stone columns hanging in the air, you may feel the deep history of the Earth through lava that has slept for millions of years. Ancient workers are said to have removed about 5 tons of rock every hour for 18 years, a speed so extreme that it still feels almost impossible today. In the dark depth of the temple, thin sunlight moves across reliefs carved from the cliff, making the gods seem as if they are slowly coming alive. The strangest mystery is that the huge amount of waste rock from this carving process seems to have vanished, leaving no clear trace or dumping place around the sacred mountain. Stonehenge, United Kingdom, existing as an eternal symbol amidst the windy moorland, this ancient stone circle stands as an enchanting puzzle, challenging human wisdom about the stature of distant prehistoric tribes. The silent contrast between cold grey megaliths and lush green grass stretching to the horizon weaves a minimalist yet hauntingly beautiful landscape that stirs every soul. Every summer solstice, when the first light of day pierces the center of the stones with absolute precision, the entire space awakens in a sacred reunion between human spirits and the stars above. It is truly miraculous that the smaller blue stones were transported over 150 miles from distant mountains, crossing rivers to gather proudly at this sanctuary d'eau. To deceive the eye and create absolute perfection, master stonemasons carve the horizontal beams with a slight arc, helping the stone circle maintain a stunningly balanced look to the human eye. In the solemn atmosphere, the wind whistling through narrow stone gaps turns into low moaning sounds like profound messages echoing from spirits thousands of years old. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. Honoured as the miraculous genesis of all civilizations, this silent megalithic complex is the most ancient spiritual space humanity has ever created under the vast sky. Existing amidst the pristine land, a giant dome, heavily imbued with the breath of the future, gently stretches out to shelter the prehistoric ruins, weaving a visually stunning contrast in the flow of time. Hidden deep beneath the arid earth, massive limestone vats with a capacity of up to 40 gallons have been unveiled, vividly recounting the story of sacred ritual feasts of fermented barley by primitive people. Surrounding that spiritual space are T-shaped pillars weighing up to 40,000 pounds standing tall, remaining there like a majestic epic poem challenging all physical limits of hunter-gatherer tribes. Astonishingly, this strangely shaped hill is actually a magnificent artificial masterpiece. Tirelessly built up by humans from countless stone fragments and animal bones over many centuries. Rising above an ordinary relic, this wonder has proudly overthrown all historical prejudices, affirming the profound truth that brilliant religious faith, rather than agriculture, was the very first light guiding humanity to unite. Once its romantic image is stripped away, the Blue Lagoon reveals itself as a giant industrial wastewater pool flowing directly into a barren desert of black rock. The atmosphere becomes eerie as water heated to 99 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit constantly meets the freezing air, creating a thick blanket of steam. Hidden within that mist is a heavy mineral content that can damage hair, remove moisture, and turn soft strands dry and rough. In fact, the water is drawn from 6,500 feet underground at a destructive temperature of 464 degrees Fahrenheit before machines cool and depressurize it. This peaceful, blurred landscape could be torn apart at any moment because boiling magma beneath the volcanic zone lies only a few miles below visitors' feet. Despite its harsh, artificial origin and hidden dangers, white mud clinging to the lava rock still transforms the area into a mesmerizing skincare sanctuary. Across a silent plain, the Plain of Jars appears with thousands of massive stone vessels forming one of Southeast Asia's darkest archaeological landscapes. To this day, the ancient community that created these jars has still not been identified with certainty in historical records. Unexploded bombs remain hidden beneath the grass around the stone vessels, making archaeological work dangerous in many areas. So, rather than being made from clay, most jars were carved from single blocks of sandstone, granite, and limestone, with some standing nearly 10 feet tall and weighing 31,000 pounds. After many centuries, at an altitude of nearly 3,937 feet, damp mist, moss, and harsh weather have left the stone surfaces rough like fossilized scales. Even stranger, wind passing across the hollow openings can produce unusual whistles, making the plane feel even colder and more mysterious. Nanmadol, Micronesia, emerging in the vast ocean like an illusion, this silent floating city is actually a deep, black megalithic ruin carrying a gloomy and highly mysterious beauty that entirely contradicts ordinary, dreamy, romantic imagination. The extreme isolation has left this profound heritage steeped in deep silence, gently gifting the rare tourists a sacred feeling as if they were explorers wandering into a completely unpopulated planet. Over many centuries of being abandoned in oblivion, massive mangrove roots have stubbornly stretched out to tightly squeeze the ancient stone walls, creating a silent yet breathtaking struggle between the power of nature and human ruins. It is even more astonishing to know that this magnificent stone maze had absolutely no freshwater or arable land, forcing the ancients to row through waves to transport every single drop of water and morsel of food from the mainland to the open sea every single day. To fully support that massive weight floating on the water, ancient craftsmen diligently poured millions of tons of coral rubble onto the natural reef, building up an incredibly solid and eternal foundation system. How miraculous it is that this solitary wonder in the open sea was created around the year 1200, proudly rising brilliantly to share the same golden era with the sacred Angkor Wat or the majestic Notre Dame de Paris on the distant mainland. Rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, Ethiopia. Yeah. Rising from what was once flat ground, this huge wonder was shaped by cutting deep into the earth and removing more than 100,000 tons of solid volcanic rock. Instead of building tall towers toward the sky, the people carved downward into the ground, sending a powerful message that true faith begins with humility. Walking through this place feels like entering an underworld, where narrow tunnels and dark trenches connect into a mysterious stone maze. Carefully sloped drainage trenches have protected the whole space from flooding for centuries. This complex was born from a deep need to create a new holy center at home when the old pilgrimage route to the Middle East was blocked. Because everything was carved from one single mother rock, the ancient builders had no room for mistakes, since one wrong strike could destroy the entire miracle. Petra, Jordan. Rising from the dry desert, this great sandstone wonder does not stand on a normal foundation but was patiently carved by human hands from the top of a cliff more than 131 feet high down to the base. To reach the treasure on the sacred high place, travelers must test their patience on 800 rough stone steps under the burning desert sun. But all the hardship seems to fade when they enter cave spaces filled with soft, swirling stone lines, glowing with changing colours like a slowly melting oil painting. With amazing skill, the ancient builders cut through the mountain and opened a tunnel 282 feet long to control dangerous floods and protect the whole valley. For a long time, this magnificent place slept under dust and was kept hidden from the outside world by nomads for nearly 1,000 years. Behind its beautiful and rich appearance, there is a quiet truth that more than 80% of these grand facades are burial places, forming a distant stone kingdom for the dead.